So what, in your perspective, the lens that you wear is currently wrong with the influencer marketing ecosystem, and what is right with the influencer marketing ecosystem?
Yeah, I got into the space and the term because I was so frustrated by by this term that was being put out there called influencer marketing, and I think that it's widely misperceived. I think it's getting better, but in order to understand influencer marketing, the core is that we have to understand influence, and using the term influencer by nature is it's almost like calling someone God, because influence is an outcome and there's no universal influencer, and there's also nobody that's influential in every space or over every audience and over every decision. So when somebody says, is she an influencer? Well, everybody's an influencer at some point in their lives,
whether we are at home or whether we're in business or outside. Exactly.
So there's misconception, and so by nature of misunderstanding it, you're shooting yourself in the foot in the ability to be able to leverage what it is. Influencer marketing is being confused as social media advertising, and the two are very different things.
Like pork and cheese, yeah.
Right? And can somebody be a content creator and be influential? Absolutely. Can somebody be a celebrity and be influential? Absolutely. But the two are not the same. And that's where the disconnect comes, and is believing the same. So when somebody says, are they a fake influencer? If you've actually done your homework and you know your audience and who they are going to, what is influencing their decision on the task at hand or the goal, the objective at hand, then how can you have a fake influencer? A fake influencer means that you've just done a search online for somebody with a certain number of following. And the other thing is the quantitative around it. How can you ever quantify somebody's audience? I mean,
what we call the vanilla metrics, I mean, the pull or the gravitas of the vanilla metrics, actually.
Yes, I like that. That's good. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions around it, and to just sum them up, like social media is not influence. Influence is not universal, and the size of one's audience does not equal influence.
Right, absolutely. So let's kind of, segue into the next thing that I want to discuss, because I'm sure there are so many thoughts that are in your mind, and there would have been some kind of conduit that would have resulted in your motivation to write Influencer Code. It's a phenomenal book. The team is reading it. I finished the first few pages, and I think it reads beautiful. There are lots of insights and experiences that we can take away from it. So what is a big motivation for you to write the book?
Yeah, the motivation, a large part of it came from the frustration over the misconception of it, and then also knowing firsthand the power of it. We're leaning too much into algorithms and into quantitative data and technology, and I don't think that we're forgetting the beauty of business is really about people and relationships, and there's a human element that cannot be quantified. You cannot rely on a tool for that. Maybe someday, but we're not there yet. And by doing that, I think we're not getting the results, and influencer marketing is getting a bad reputation. And so we need to shift the entire way of thinking. And I think, the first book I wrote, this was not the book I intended to write, but I ended up writing it this way because I realized that the way that I really wanted to talk about the strategy for influencer marketing starts with a paradigm shift in how we think. So you can't go to compare it to like baseball. You can't start on second base if everybody's still on first base. So first of all, let's change the way we think about it. And I think, I try to put a lot of frameworks, because I don't believe that business has best practices. I mean, you can't just, it's not surgery, right? You can't just take something and say, you do exactly this and it's going to work for you, or everybody will be successful. But rather taking frameworks, kind of like a way of the land. And that was what I really tried to do there, was try to give some sort of sense of meaning and a way of thinking around influencer marketing as as I see it. And I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Which are the brands in your experience that are really, really kind of getting it right and then nailing it in terms of the influencer marketing as an initiative, as an exercise? And why do you feel, which are the brands that people can take inspiration from? I mean, they've got this idea of
Yeah.
inspiration marketing really, really spot on.
Yeah, I think the brands that have done it the best have never really called it influencer marketing. It's not something new, right? I think the very first showcase of influencer marketing was like way back in, I forget which century it was in, but it was a guy named Josiah Wedgwood, and he started a China company, and or started making China in the UK, and he asked the Queen if she liked it, and the Queen and if he could put her stamp on it, and by doing that it became Wedgwood China, and it's it was a legacy brand because of that. That's influencer marketing. In our time, Lululemon is probably one of the most iconic brands that's done exactly that, and they will say they never spent any money on people on marketing. Well, because I think the best influencer marketing doesn't involve the transaction of any money, rather it's a mutually beneficial goal. It's collaboration. It's knowing that both parties are in it, and they're both driven for a mutual goal. And they championed local yoga instructors and fitness instructors and people that were trying to grow their brand, and they gave them what they wanted, right? They gave them exposure, they gave them opportunity, they gave them event space, they gave them an audience. And then, and vice versa, the Lululemon then got like incredible exposure over the audience that they were trying to reach. Who's more influential over certain things that you buy or do than when you're in your instructor. So they weren't famous people, but they created these incredibly mutual beneficial relationships, and both sides nurtured those relationships. They weren't like they are marriages. They're not one night stands, and they take time to develop. And I think that's in marketing in general. I think that's so much of what we have to think about, is that marketing is about relationships, and relationships don't happen overnight. To give a great example that I always try to think about, especially as in this world that we live in where we're constantly rushed and there's never enough time, is if you went to a party and you walked in and you didn't know anybody, and you found a few people that you thought they looked interesting, you wanted to be friends with them, you wouldn't go up to them and say, hey, this is how great I am, here are all the attributes that I have, and like, can I, let's be friends. Like, what about, what, I've got this really great sports car that you can use if you're my friend. That's the same thing as like the transaction, right? The pay to post. Might you get them on board? Yeah, but will it be authentic? No. And so I think that's what we're trying to do, and that's okay, right? That's advertising. There's a place for advertising, and it's a part of marketing, but it's not influencer marketing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very keen to know about the influencer marketing course that you co-developed and designed. Tell us a bit about it, and I know, and congratulations on that being kind of taken into the Kellogg's program as well. Tell us a bit about the background and how it originated.
Yeah, it was originally when I was still running my agency, and I met a professor that was at UCLA, and he asked me to come in and speak, and I did, and I loved it, and he was blown away by like how differently I was talking about influencer marketing and how nobody was talking about it in this way. And he said, what would you think about developing curriculum around this? And I thought, I have no idea what that even means. And but I am very structured by nature, and I like a goal. And he said, I will work with you on it if
I've
you
never run into that neck of the woods, but I don't mind running.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that. I like a challenge. And he was about as opposite from me as it got. He was a traditional academic. He was a Harvard multiple degree graduate, and extremely cerebral, and analytical. And I'm kind of like a big personality and all over the place. And so it was a really interesting mix, because I got from him, and in order to do it, I had to co-teach with him some legacy courses like social media marketing, digital media marketing. And through that, he was extremely strict about how things were done in academia, and research and theory and practice and objectives. And it was an incredible experience, because I learned so much on that vein, because I was coming from a world where you did it yourself, and you tried it and you failed and you tried it again. And it was very different than the theoretical approach, but marrying the two was where the magic came. And I felt it very difficult at first. And then I grasped that there was a real beauty, and that's what was missing a lot, because when practitioners come into academia, nobody teaches them how to, there's no pedagogy training.
Right.
There's like online portals, whatever, but it was what I went through was like boot camp for academia. And in doing that, I felt like I was like, I was going through the process of selling the agents, selling the company. And I believed that there was a bigger purpose. And I've always been driven by that, something that gets you up in the day, that, and it sounds cheesy, but like when you really feel like you're making a difference. And I just felt like there was a place for me there. And so I ended up finishing the curriculum on my own, and then realizing that there was no book on the subject, and there was a lot of agency biased articles, and there is a lot of books, but nobody that was talking about it in this way,
Right.
that was non-biased.
So it was a natural, seamless entry into the writing of the book.
Exactly. So I didn't set out to write a curriculum, and then I didn't set out to write, I literally wrote the book to go with the curriculum. So my course is actually set up that if you were to read the first course, part one of let's say the degree program, is if you were to be a professor and take that book, it would literally be lecture 1 is chapter 1. Lecture 2 is chapter 2. And it complements, and that's why it's very unconventionally written. But I also wanted to be extremely conversational and simple. To be honest, I wanted my parents to be able to read it and maybe not get it all, but a lot of it.
Right. It's very consumable, very easily understandable and
Exactly.
very relatable. Yeah. Which brings me to, I suspect there is, if not one, multiple sequels for the book on the way, because the way it is actually laid out, I suspect as a publisher, as a media branding agency, we feel that we were internally discussing, I think this has got multiple sequels written all over it. And probably also you could create, extensions and all in terms of podcasts or television property and all of that, have you got it right?
Yeah. I just launched a podcast in January with one of who also happened to write a book on influencer marketing that complements this one. And it came out only a couple months before mine. So we were writing it at the same time. And he was somebody that I had read. I had read a lot of his books for many years. Neil Schaefer, and he wrote The Age of Influence. And he's got a lot more years of experience. I mean, he's a professor at Rutgers. He actually spends a lot of time with clients and doing a lot of consulting in Asia. But he's been a podcaster. Has one of the most popular marketing podcasts, and he pitched the idea of doing co-hosting a podcast with me. And I thought I'd never do a podcast. There's so many out there. And he said, yeah, but it's a content medium. To continue to force yourself to push. And also, honestly, it's been a way of connecting with incredible people, and getting different, and forcing you on a weekly basis to get different perspectives. So it's not just about like, okay, I should be reading more, but you're actually forced to listen.
No, as Seth Godin puts it beautifully, showing up and shipping it out, showing up and shipping it out, showing up and shipping it out.
Yeah.
All right, and what typically is your day like? What kind of things do you do? I know you wouldn't have much spare time, and you have a passion for fitness and running and all of that. And how do you manage the day? As if you were to be kind of giving some inspiration to future writers, educators, what would that be? What is the kind of sign up that you would want to give away?
Yeah, well, one of them, and I think a lot of people say this, but for me, it's my drug, and that's exercise. I have to do it. Like legitimately for my brain to function. I've actually tried to be more disciplined about not exercising so much because it is extremely time consuming. But that's one. But another thing that really helps, and this is probably unconventional to say this, but there's something about getting excited about the little things, getting excited about what you're going to do. And that's training your brain. And it's just like athletes train their brain, you train your brain. So I think before I get up in the morning, I literally sit there, lay there, and I think about the things that I'm going to be doing that day work wise. Like I know that if I'm going to be writing a lecture on XYZ, I know that I'm going to be meeting with so-and-so. And I get excited. I train my brain to get excited to like, be like, yes, I'm doing that today. And if you're going to choose to do something, do it with all of your energy and enjoy it as much as you can. Not everything is like, unicorns and ponies, but if you, it's 100% mindset. So something that you were easily dreading, if you flip that and you're like, I'm going to get like, and I make it fun. I'm like, I'm going to get, when that happens, when I switch to my X writing mode, I'm going to get a new cup of coffee. And I literally plan it that way. I'm like, that's a new cup of that's the new cup of coffee. And it like, or that's like, there are ways that I structure things that way where I trigger things in my brain to set it up. So I actually envision myself doing it and enjoying it.
Probably just sowing the seed for another book on self-motivation. Have you thought of it?
Hey, oh, I've got a bag of those. Yeah, that's for sure. I think coming from an athletic background like that, especially in one of the most grueling sports on the planet, and you go through, they call it brain training, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it. To an extent, I'm actually working on a documentary right now on mindset, on female, the mindset and how we actually are wired differently, certain individual sport athletes, and how your brain chemistry
Right.
has actually shifted. So yeah, maybe there's another book on that.
All the best for that. All the best for that. And as I say, when the enthusiasm and the beginner's mindset actually kind of sets the stone for rest of what you end up achieving, isn't it? The enrollment, the energy that you can put in is all with having a beginner's mindset, irrespective of what level you've reached in life. Okay, it's just telling yourself that I've got that curiosity, that childlike enthusiasm.
Yes.
All right. It is all lovely talking to you, Amanda. Wonderful, and all the very best with all the ventures that you have, and we'll stay in touch.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you so much.